UFC 279.
9.
Khamzat Chimaev versus
Juicy.
Nate Diaz. What did you think of this? When this
So
got
juicy.
made, what were you thinking? How did you first react when you saw this fight?
So I've changed my opinion on it a few times. I keep going back and forth. But at first I was like, that's rough for Nate. Like everyone probably did, right? I was like, yeah, I think they're literally feeding him to the wolves there.
The
The
balls.
actual wolf. The balls. And then I was like, I was just thinking about Nate. And I was like, that's a 5-round fight though. And I thought about Khamzat's last fight where he didn't blow his load on Burns, but he looked tired and it was 3 rounds. I'm like, Nate's not going anywhere. Like Nate will zombie it up and then just clip you and start teeing off on you. So I think it's going to be closer than people think. This might get clipped and memed off, but I think it's actually a closer fight than people think. But yeah, it's still a very favourable matchup for Khamzat. What do you think?
The funny thing going into it is like what you said firstly. I've gone back and forth on this, right? I've gone back and forth this multiple times, and I heard obviously Dan Hardy came out and said that somebody's going to get an assault charge for this or something crazy.
Oh, mate, yeah.
Always one to sort of speak his mind. But it is true when you think about Nate Diaz just fought Leon Edwards, and no one was having this conversation. This wasn't even a conversation. This was a conversation of like, cool, yeah, I want to watch this fight. So, firstly, there's a bit of a red flag there. Why are we not doing that for that?
Sure.
But secondly, the thing is with this fight is, the first thing about Nate Diaz is you always run the risk with him just getting elbowed, opening up a massive bit of scar tissue, and the ref calling.
Yeah.
That's what I don't like, and that's why I always get worried with. And I thought it against, I thought it was going to happen against Leon, especially with Leon's elbows. I think it could quite easily happen again with this. The one thing that I find interesting, right, is coming into this fight, a lot of people like what you just said, and I do agree, is like, this is a 5-round fight. So you can never count Nate Diaz out. Now, the interesting thing about Chimaev is that last fight against Burns, that was the biggest fight of his life, more eyeballs on it than ever before. The first really competitive opponent, and the fact that he wanted to go out and sort of have that wild fight, have that war, get that under his belt sort of thing, right? And obviously we saw how crazy that his coach got, because realistically, Khamzat Chimaev could have stuck him behind his jab, moved a couple of takedowns, sprinkled him in, and won quite comfortably, I believe. I believe he could have probably done that. But he didn't do that. He wanted the stoppage, and he also, it was a lack of IQ, 100%, but he wanted to get that war. So now the question, why I'm so interested in this fight is, the question now to me is, Khamzat Chimaev has sort of gone into this realm of notoriety where he's in a really difficult spot, right? Because if he beats Nate Diaz, if he just beats him, not convinced, if he just beats him, he goes on to that title. So the question is now, does he just try to win and trying to do everything, game plan what he needs to do to win and move on to the title? Or does he get brought into this emotional battle with one of the biggest stars in the world and try and have this spectacular... Because if he does, bearing in mind that he's still inexperienced, he's still an inexperienced fighter, especially in the sort of in the top of the league. And Nate Diaz is as big as it gets. There's Conor McGregor and there's Nate Diaz, and McGregor's here, but Diaz is here. You know, he's as big as it gets. So does he come in and fight with his ego? Because if he does, I think that's where you get that gas in, right? That's when you start getting tired.
It's actually a really interesting question. I think he comes from a really smart team, All Stars, and if you look at last time, like they were like pretty annoyed with him after the Gilbert Burns fight. They were like, "What are you doing? You nearly threw it all away," you know. So I think it'll be a lot more disciplined, especially someone that's like renowned for their durability. I think he comes from a smart team, but it's easy to say that I'm going to go in, feel him out. Then you've got Diaz talking shit in front of you, and you're like, "I need to hit this guy." Then you hit him. And you might hit him again. You might even hit him again. You might even hit him again after that. But he's not going anywhere.
And then you know what I mean? He slaps you around the chops and sticks his middle fingers up.
What motherfucker?
This is the thing, right? And now you've got the entire... Because this is the thing about Khamzat Chimaev. He's transcended himself into this star of where he's sort of in a lose-lose... but not in a lose-lose position, but he's always on the back foot. Because he always has to outdo this star power that he has, right? And that's a difficult thing to do. Obviously, that's what made McGregor so special, is because he said all these things and then he backed up, because that's the difficult thing.
Yeah.
And Khamzat has done that to this point. But it's like what you said, is if he starts getting a little bit in his head, Nate Diaz, because it happens to everyone, he drops his guard quite literally for a second, and then bang, he just gets clipped by something. And then it could just, you don't know what sort of fight we're going into the 4th and 5th, where we've never seen Khamzat Chimaev, especially in a fight this magnitude.
Yeah, shit unravels.
You see him caught in a triangle, and Nate's just on his back like this, and he rides off into the sunset. Contract with the UFC done.
Oh, mate. Yeah. That's another interesting talking point about the fight, to be fair. It's his last fight on the contract, so I think they are trying to give him probably the worst matchup possible for him. But, like, if he goes and beats Hums like that, it's a literal big middle fingers up to the UFC.
That's the most Nate Diaz thing you could do.
He'll literally do that today.
That's the most Nate Diaz. The interesting thing, I think, and then we'll come on to the next fight, but when you actually hear Nate Diaz talk about the UFC, I heard him on Ariel Helwani, he doesn't even really want to cut, he doesn't want to cut ties. He just wants to go and do he just wants to go box Jake Paul. And realistically, I don't know why we're being around it. He wants to box Jake Paul for 60 million or something ridiculous, and then probably come back. Because the thing is, a lot of people, and I feel passionately on the Nate Diaz spot, but a lot of people said he's waffling and he's chatting rubbish. But when you actually listen to what Nate Diaz was saying in that interview, right, he goes on to say, and basically says, I've been around this sport since it basically started, which is true. He's been one of the biggest names since the beginning of it. True. He's done everything in this sport, obviously apart from win a title, which is true. He holds the first win over McGregor, like arguably one of the biggest wins ever, really, one of. So he says now, he's like, there's not a lot for me to do. There's not a lot for, that's why he said, like, either I fight, can't remember, someone or Francis. And obviously he's not going to fight Francis, but
I think he would,
yeah, 100%. And I would I would love to see it. But he's got a point, right? There's not really much left for him to do, because you could say, oh, but he hasn't fought this person, he hasn't fought. It's like, well, yeah, he's been doing this for the last 20 years. Like, yeah, there's like, this person's a big name, but like, he's been doing this to big names, like, he's been having this, like, there's nothing too exciting for him. So, like, I don't even think the belt excites him that much, to be honest with you. I thought he was gonna leave off of that, but no, you're right. I don't think he's massively. And anyway, I think he sort of knows that's just going to be a bit of a sticky one to sort of navigate. So I think that we're going to see him chuck up a triangle in the 4th. I think we're going to see him choke him out.
Oh, really?
I think we're going to see double middle fingers.
Really? I'd love that. I'm not going to lie.
The thing is, like,
that'd be vintage Diaz.
It's going to be hard to do. And Gilbert Burns, couldn't really get. The thing is, as well, Khamzat will get into a war, but he's not dumb. And he knows, like, if Nate's on his back, like, just disengage.
Sure.
So, like, well, actually, because this is next week, I keep forgetting. I'm going to pull a prediction. Yeah,
so
I'm going to pull a prediction.
So good that that's next week.
Yeah, I want one from
me.
Since it's next week, I keep thinking this is ages in advance.
Yeah, because we'll recap next week. I don't think Chimaev will stop him, but I do think he'll win by decision. But I think he'll get caught like Leon did, but still win. And then Nate will kind of get all the clout of winning without actually winning.
I don't think that Nate's gonna lose this fight. Like, in a sense where the fans, you see what I'm saying? Where he's just gonna, he never does. He never does. He didn't lose against Leon, and Leon beat him for 4 minutes 30 seconds of 24 minutes 30 seconds, which is kind of crazy. Like I said earlier, though, I'm always worried about Diaz. I'm always worried about the cuts, and I don't want to see it end like that. I think 2.5 times out of 10, I think Nate Diaz wins, and I want to see nothing more than one of those 2.5 times out of 10. That's how I'm going to say it. I'm sitting on the fence. I'm going to say Khamzat takes it, but I want a Nate Diaz triangle submission more than anything in the world.